everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and it is Weapons Wednesday, so specifically, welcome back to the Armory. This is where all weapons from Halo lore be featured and analysed in detail. Now, before we get started, I just want to address that I have more or less now covered every small arms that you can use in a Halo game, and all of their respective variants therein, in my Armory series thus far. Meaning, notwithstanding today's video, there are no new weapons I can really cover within Halo lore anymore, so I wanted to ask you, do you want me to make a vehicle weapons Armory series, or continue this series with vehicle weapons? But I don't necessarily want to deliver repeated content because when I eventually get round to doing the most detailed breakdowns of those respective vehicles, I will likely cover all of those weapons varieties in those videos as well, and I don't want you to feel like I'm just repeating myself all the time. Additionally, do you want me to perhaps cover ship-based weapons? However, there's also a caveat to that in that there is limited information, assets, footage, renders of those weapons, so while I can extrapolate a lot of information, I still want the videos to be interesting and engaging for you to watch, and I'd hate to make a video where you just end up watching the same 3 or 4 images cycling in a slideshow fashion. That'd feel like I was shortchanging you significantly, and I don't necessarily want to do that if it's not going to be interesting and compelling content to watch. But in either case, if you'd like me to cover either of those, let me know in the comments down below. Now in this episode we look at the brand new Mutilator. However, before we get started, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. This is a new weapon addition to the sandbox that has not existed in any other piece of lore to date, and the information we have about this weapon is literally limited to a single sentence in Infinite's weapons bench, and its in-game behaviours. There is no lore, there is no origin story, no specifics on the size of the weapon, the ammunition it uses, or practically anything else. If that information does appear at some point in the near future, I will of course revisit this weapon and give it a more substantial dive into the lore, but for now, I'm literally going to rely on the limited information available in-game, on Halo Waypoint, and reference lore from elsewhere where it applies to give more detail on this weapon, and I'll guide you on how I came to whatever conclusions I did as we advance through the video. But obviously with all of that said, that means most of this video will be extrapolated and inferred from what little we have, rather than any canon or lore reference material, because quite honestly, it doesn't exist. So everything I say may be completely irrelevant when future lore drops come into effect, but for now, I believe this is the best stab at a semi-decent dive into the lore of the Mutilator. Let's begin. The Mutilator is a weapon of seemingly dual-Hane design developed by the Banished during their operations in the Battle of Zeta Halo. 2 barrels, 1 gravity-shifting wallop, the Mutilator is a cruel instrument of maximum devastation, born of the imponderable pairing of a double-barreled shotgun and a gravity hammer. Its very recent addition to the Banished arsenal is entirely unexpected and already racking up some serious body counts across Zeta Halo. Fittingly enough, the weapon doesn't hold back in its raw utility, its brutal application, and its irrevocably Banished design aesthetic. At face value, one might suggest that perhaps the dual-Hane had some inspirations or had come across human double-barreled shotguns and decided to upgrade the design to meet dual-Hane damage requirements, and the impressive attachment of a gravity hammerhead as something approximating a fixed bayonet. While it could be said that inspiration may have come loosely from human shotguns, as we do see brutes using them heavily during the battle for Zeta Halo and even during the closing days of the Human Covenant War, the design of this double-barreled shotgun is most definitely dual-Hane in origin. The double-barreled function and aesthetic are fairly close matches to the spike rifle, except where the spike rifle alternate fires from each barrel, the Mutilator fires a single shot from the top and bottom barrel in turn, or can be switched to an alt-fire mode that empties both barrels at once, for a twofer of titanic output. There are no specific lore sizes listed for this weapon, so instead I will give you my estimate and explain how I came to that conclusion. I believe the weapon has a length of 60.5 inches or 153.9 centimeters, a height of 16.6 inches or 42.3 centimeters, and a width of 9.5 inches or 24.1 centimeters. I came to this conclusion by looking at the promotional material for the Mutilator and using objects I know the dimensions of as a measuring stick for the Mutilator. I used the known lore dimensions of the sidekick in this image, being 32.8cm or 12.9 inches in length, and compared the length of the Mutilator to this. I realised this isn't absolutely ideal given the sidekick is not at the same depth from the camera and thus its apparent size from our perspective may be slightly off. So to double check this, I also took a measurement of the bore diameter of the sidekick, known to be 10mm, and again compared this to the overall weapon length. From both of these calculations, I ascertained the length of the weapon sat between 60.3 inches and 60.7 inches, so I took the average and settled on 60.5. From this, I could then use the Mutilator itself to find the remaining dimensions. The easiest way I found of doing this was to take an image of the Mutilator and scale it to a multiple of the length I had just found in pixels. Once I'd done this, the height was simply the reverse calculated from the pixel height of the image. Once I had the height, I did the same for the width, and that's how I found the final sizing. This may be completely overwritten by new lore as it emerges, but it's the best we have at the moment, and I'm comfortable with the margin for error. If these measurements are accurate, it is a rather conservative size for a shotgun, especially considering that it is wielded by Jiralhane, a species much larger than humanity. The Mutilator is a relatively simple over and under double-barreled shotgun. The weapon is decidedly utilitarian in its design, which is not a surprise given its Jiralhane origins. There is no trigger guard, seemingly no safety, and the grip of the weapon is wrapped in the barest wraps of leather. The Mutilator loads via break action, in which the barrels are hinged much like a door and rotate perpendicularly to the bore axis to expose the breech and allow loading and unloading of cartridges. A latch is operated to release the two parts of the weapon, allowing the breech to be exposed. And the Mutilator appears to be self-ejecting double-barreled shotgun, which refers to a shotgun that automatically ejects spent shell casings after firing without the need for manual extraction. This feature is typically achieved through spring-loaded mechanisms, often called ejectors, that push the spent shells out of the chamber when the action is opened. Rounds are then inserted into the breech, loading both barrels, or only one if the user has only one round left or prefers to only load one round, and the mechanism is closed and latched. The Mutilator doesn't seem to have a hammer that has to be cocked before firing, suggesting the weapon self-cocks. After firing the rounds, the break action is unlatched and the barrel and forearm are allowed to fall forward. This causes an ejector catch to remove the spent shells so that they fall to the ground, leaving the weapon ready for reloading again. The weapon can be fired a barrel at a time, for a total of 2 shots, or, by toggling the digital selector mounted above the grip, can be switched to an alternative firing mode where both barrels are fired simultaneously. The Mutilator has iron sights mounted along the top, and is also seemingly compatible with heads-up display target reticle systems. One of the Mutilator's more immediately obvious and impressive additions is the gravity hammer attachment. Though gravity hammers used by Jiralhane serving in the Covenant military tended to follow a standard design, not all are functionally or aesthetically identical. Gravity hammers are often tailored to suit the desired specifics of clans, families, and packs. The Mutilator follows a similar aesthetic and function design to the Halbashi workshop gravity hammers currently in heavy employment with the Banished during the Battle of Zeta Halo, but seemingly scaled down by a notable margin. Whether the head of this hammer is made of a tungsten alloy, a dense metal used heavily by the Jiralhane, or a composite material such as with the Rushdown hammer variant, is still subject for debate. What is known is that the hammer attachment uses the same gravitic impellers as the Halbashi workshop gravity hammers, lined with at least 3 on the front face, allowing the wielder to generate immense concussive forces upon impact with a surface or target. Once again, there is no specific information on the ammo used in the Mutilator, so once again I made some conservative measurements and estimates, and I'll explain to you how I came to those conclusions. First, I wanted to find the overall barrel length. This was easy given I had already calculated the dimensions of the weapon. It was just a case of measuring from the muzzle to the break action of the Mutilator. From this, I found the length of the barrel was 117cm or 46 inches. Next, to find the bore diameter. Similar to finding the dimensions using other known items as measuring sticks, I used the sidekick's bore diameter of 10mm to estimate the bore of the Mutilator. From this I concluded the bore diameter is approximately 20.5mm. Obviously this is an alien weapon, but for shotguns generally they fit nicely into gauges, so having a shotgun that has a 20.5mm bore diameter suggests it falls outside of the gauge system, or is a currently as of yet undesignated gauge. A 10 gauge shotgun bore diameter measures 19.68mm, but has thus far not really been featured at all within any Halo game. However, the 8 gauge bore measures 21.21mm, and everyone should be intimately familiar with the legendary M90 close assault weapon system, otherwise known as the Halo CE shotgun, which just so happens to be an 8 gauge. Since the Mutilator has a bore diameter of 20.5mm, it could be that it doesn't have a gauge at all, or at least cannot be defined as one, or that it's classified as a 9 gauge shotgun. However, this is assuming my measurements were perfect, and there's a good chance they're not. So given that we're closer to the 8 gauge end of the spectrum, I'm willing to err on the side of caution and suggest that the Mutilator is a double-barreled 8 gauge shotgun, assuming a bore diameter of 21.21mm. As far as I can tell, it is smooth bore, meaning there is no rifling down the barrel to add spin to the projectile that is fired. On Halopedia, it's referenced the Mutilator fires spike pellets, referencing Halo Infinite gameplay as the source. At this time, I've seen no descriptions on Halo Infinite or Halo Waypoint that confirm the projectiles are spike pellets, so from this I assume that it's based solely on the physical appearance of the projectiles fired from the weapon, and I have to agree, they do look spiky, I suppose is the right word. Although, I could have also missed a small detail somewhere, I could have overlooked something. So if this is the case, then the projectiles are small tungsten alloy spikes, shards, or simply slightly elongated and sharpened pips, ejected from the weapon at supersonic velocities. The rate at which these shards or spikes or pellets would drop to subsonic velocities after firing is of course dependent on their size and mass, and their irregular shape would adversely affect their aerodynamic stability at longer ranges, but be utterly devastating to a target at close range, likely eviscerating the target on impact. And of course, as a new addition to the weapon sandbox, there are no known variants of the Mutilator. The Mutilator's advantages are very self-evident. The ability to fire very large bore shots at close range can score an instant kill if it lands center mass. The projectile spread and grouping over distance, even for a shotgun, is fairly tight. The ability to dynamically switch between a single shot and a combined double shot firing discipline at a moment's notice is extremely useful. Single shots up close are often lethal. Using a double shot up close guarantees an instant kill with brutal consequences, and if the target is slightly farther away, having the choice of hitting them twice or once with a double strike offers a great variation in gunplay. Being able to chase a shot with a powerful gravity hammer strike places this weapon on par with the Mauler for its lethality and brutality at close range, but completely outperforms the Mauler in its function against vehicles. The fact that the hammer attachment never expends its energy suggests some impressive developments on the functional technology behind the hammer, and mean even if the weapon has no ammo whatsoever, it's still fully usable as a blunt force instrument, mediated by its impressive gravity impellers and distortion fields. The gravity hammer is a very powerful weapon, useful in close quarters combat. With a bit of skill, they can be effectively used against vehicles, offering an instant kill. The hammer has a splash damage effect, and a well-placed hit could kill multiple foes in one swing. Since the gravity hammer attachment never seems to run out of power, even if the weapon's ammunition is exhausted, the user still has a highly effective close-range melee weapon that can cause mayhem on the battlefield. The Mutilator does have some notable drawbacks. It is quite obviously a short-range weapon, so challenging foes even at medium distance is often not worth the trade-off, unless you can close the distance swiftly, and even then, it may not be enough. The weapon's inherent power on the battlefield makes you a target for snipers, and your foes will likely hit you hard to take you off the battlefield so they can gain possession of the weapon themselves. The Mutilator has a fairly long reload time, during which time the user is vulnerable, but can still defend themselves with the hammer attachment, but it will cancel the reload, leaving the user without ammo for even longer. With only 2 rounds available per reload and the double shot setting expending both of them, a miss with the shot leaves the user with only the gravity hammer attachment as a final resort. If the opponent avoided serious damage from the fired rounds and is marginally out of range for the fatal hammer strike, the effect may be only to push the opponent back and clear of the user, presenting an open opportunity to counter-attack. Careful resource management is required, and a good understanding of situational awareness and the respective effective ranges of the fired rounds and the hammer attack, lest the user be put down before effectively bringing either to bear. Ammunition for this weapon is scarce, meaning one must rely solely on the gravity hammer attachment or swap to a ranged weapon once supplies run out. Overall, the Mutilator is a phenomenally powerful close-range weapon, and certainly a weapon you should be actively seeking on the battlefield or steering clear of any opponent who's wielding one. And again, when further lore or information becomes available on it, I will make a follow-up video looking into the specifics and seeing how close or far off I was in my estimates. Remember, let me know if you want me to cover vehicle weapons, although I may repeat myself at a later date, or ship weapons, though it may be a little less engaging to watch. In either case, I'll do my best to make sure you guys are eating good. And if not, then I will officially shelve the Armory series until the next addition to the Halo franchise. And until next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular Contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors Sophia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.